Oops, haven't done that in a while. Hey guys, welcome to SheKnowsArsenal. My name is Jessica. I'm your host. You can follow me on Twitter at JustinoTweets and at SheKnowsArsenal. And I am talking right now, and I can barely hear myself talking because I have a weird cold coming over. So don't judge me. But yeah, welcome to another transfer talk. We're going to be going over all the most recent Arsenal news and transfer news in this show. We'll do a little bit of talking about the FA Cup because I think it is topical as well, and just get into all the rumors. So make sure you guys like this video and subscribe to the channel. Also, and vote on the poll that I have going on right now. Why can't I see it? Mudryk or Felix. Let me know what you guys think if you just had to choose between the two. You guys can give me your whys in the chat box if you want to. So, getting into it, just starting out, I do want to touch on the FA Cup draw. Because if that wasn't obvious, I don't know what was. I was just sitting there waiting on them to pull number 4 and then pull number 16. Because I was like, there's no way we're not getting out of this without having to face Manchester City. Right? And so, obviously we have to get through the next round, and we should, but people are getting got. That's the reality. People are getting got. Big teams, good teams are getting got by the lower level opposition. We were one of those teams last season. So there's no guarantee, that we just go straight through because we're Arsenal and we're playing a lower level team or whatever. Going away from home to a team that's going to be up for it. This is their opportunity to take a huge scout from the Premier League. We have to be on it, So assuming that we get beyond that and we move on to the next round, we have to play Manchester City away from home on January 30th, which presents a little bit of an extra fixture. That's not going to be an easy fixture away from home. It feels like we're playing a lot of games away from our house, which it doesn't make me happy. But, I felt very discouraged by that. I cannot lie. I was like, well, I guess we're not getting any FA Cup this year. And I know some people were like, well, how can you say that? And I'm like, Manchester City away from home. Yeah, I don't think I'm out of the realm of reality that could just be it, especially because we don't have the same level of depth that they do. If you watch them play Chelsea, they just completely swept them aside with a rotated squad. It seems like, some of their players are coming back in, like Mahrez coming back, looking good and ready for the second half of the season. So I imagine we'll beat City at least one time this season, as we still have yet to play them in the league. But I would love to get by them in the FA Cup. There are conversations amongst Arsenal fans around how important the FA Cup is, but I'm sorry, I can't get behind the idea that Arsenal should be almost throwing competitions or playing really rotated squads or whatever just so that we can maintain our title push. I don't actually think that that's how big teams operate. I don't think it helps us in any real capacity. We were out of the FA Cup quite early last season and did not have any Europe and still did not make our target. I don't know where we get it, where it's like, if we're not in this competition or this competition, it's going to push us forward in the league. It's not. We saw last season, it did not work that way. We were out of the FA Cup quite early, albeit we were in the Carabao Cup quite late. But ultimately, we didn't have anything else distracting us from the Premier League, and we still did not make our target. So I'm not really buying this. We should be out of the FA Cup. What we should have is more depth and more quality so that we could feel like we can compete on multiple fronts. And that's where the January transfer window comes in, because again, it is January 9th and Arsenal look no closer to really signing anybody. No new bids have went in for Mudryk. There's rumors, but not anything concrete. And so we can't just exist within this world of ESR is a new signing. He's not going to be enough. he's just not going to be enough. Like, Gabriel Jesus is not going to be here to the beginning of March, so we need reinforcements, and it feels like we need two. Like, you know what I mean? We just don't have enough. And if you think Arteta is going to throw the FA Cup so that we can go far in the Europa League, and it will be funny about the Europa League is we won't perform well there, or something will happen and people will say, well, now we have to get rid of the Europa League because we need to focus on the league. No, we need more depth and we need to perform. Let's see what you guys are saying. Wilson says, it's about time that Arsenal need to end this Manchester City hoodoo. It's been a while, since we have beaten them. It has been a while. Last season, we were unfortunate not to beat them at home. I do think that our, youth and exuberance and almost like emotional, things like took over the game, and the red card didn't help, and conceding a late goal to Rodri in the way that we did. But I think we're smart enough now to, be competitive in that match, not be stupid, and like, if we can't win, don't lose. Because I think that's what's so important in these games against the big teams is sometimes you can't win, but just don't lose. And I think last season we did a lot of losing. There weren't enough draws in there, and that's going to be important, picking up those 1 point here, 1 point there, 1 point there instead of none. Is going to be significant, but we should beat them at least once this season. I'm not sure if it's going to be away from home. Wayne says, but Jess, that was due to injuries. Big White Clock says we need to aim for the treble this season. I just think we need to aim to like go as far as we can in every single competition. Like, that's the reality. But I hear what you're saying. Roman Van Staden says, how, please, Jess, we beat City with the weaker team when we won the FA Cup. Well, quite similarly to the way that Newcastle nicked a draw from us, that's how we beat City. And that's not the way that we will play against City ever again. We're never going to go to the Etihad or be at the Emirates or be at Wembley against Manchester City and sit in a low block with, 3 at the back, 5 at the back, 2 central defensive midfielders sitting in front of them, and a front 3. Like, we're just not going to do it. And so, although I think that was a great way to get through that cup competition, we've never really seen that again. And I think that, we did do it, so there's a possibility. But this team and the way that we play with the 4-3-3, playing on the front foot, has not beaten Manchester City. And I think I put a very clear line between the way that we played in the FA Cup versus, I don't take it away from Arteta. It's Arteta's achievement, whatever. But in terms of like, that team is totally different than this team. Saka wasn't even in that team. Like, he won the FA Cup, but he wasn't really a big part of the team until the following season. And so I want to see this team and the way that we play, front-footed, attacking football, beat Manchester City. Colin says Manchester City's B side would be top 4 level. Let's see. Shin says, I can't wait to beat City. I'm confident this match will be blockbuster. Hopefully. And maybe they'll have to do some rotation because, they have people are focusing a lot on our schedule. I don't know if people have seen Manchester City's schedule over the next couple of weeks, but they have some tough fixtures and some different things that they have to focus on as well. And so maybe they'll rotate a little bit and that'll give us an advantage. But we know that they always have the opportunity to bring the likes of Haaland off the bench. If Alvarez is starting, they have Mahrez, they have so many players. And so Arsenal will probably have to play a really strong lineup against them no matter what. Abdel says City managed to create the pseudo greatness that can intimidate opposing teams. They're really not that great. Our squad with another 1 or 2 signings can easily beat them. I wouldn't say easily, but I do think we have the capacity to beat them. But I think we have to be like perfect, to beat them. Like, I don't think we can be just like, because the thing about City is that they may let their guard down against the odd Leeds or the odd Everton, but they are not letting their guard down against Mikel Arteta's Arsenal. Like, they will play their best football against us. Like, trust and believe. They don't underestimate us anymore. They view us as a threat. So they will come up against us and play their best. And so we have to be cognizant of that. But we still have to get to the next round. So we will put a pin in that, but I just wanted to at least just touch on the fact that, like, it was so obvious we were gonna get that draw. Like, as the balls were coming out, I was like, so we couldn't get Luton Town, we couldn't get Wrexham, we couldn't get Birmingham, we couldn't get any of these teams. Yeah. So there's 100 of you guys in here. Make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel. So moving forward onto just like the transfer news that's out there, in terms of, you know, who we've been linked to. Joao Felix is still being linked to Arsenal. And what's interesting about this is that, like, Manchester United have turned their interest towards Woodworkhurst. Weghorst. Wugga wugga? Woot Workhorst. They have turned their attention towards him, and that deal looks like it's inching towards it could be completed. So when I saw that, I'm thinking, okay, they're going for a cut price, like stopgap type loan deal for a striker. And so, which makes a lot of sense for them, because Weghorst to me reminds me of like Haller, and Haller did really well under Ten Hag at Ajax. And so I can see him going for a different type of striker, even if they were interested in Joao Felix. Because I do think a lot of managers can say, like, you know, we could bring in a more complete number 9 and our system just has to tweak a little bit this way, this way, this way. Or we could go with a false 9 and our system can tweak this way, this way, this way. And I think Ten Hag is kind of like that. You saw him pivot from Frankie de Jong to Casemiro quite seamlessly. So I'm not really surprised that they're like, okay, well, what else is on the market? What can we work with? And then go with that. So does that give us a free run at Joao Felix? I don't know. You know, I think you can probably take Manchester United out of the running for Joao Felix, you know, in terms of a January move. That we know that Manchester United is in the process of being sold, and the Glazers don't want to spend too much money on players now because they're selling the club. So going after a workhorse is like, okay, that's a stopgap for them. That will take them out of the race for Joao Felix. But what does that mean for Arsenal? Arsenal still need the figures to come down. You know, Arsenal are not going to pay the 9 million plus 70 obligation. Like, they're not. And Ben Jacobs did put together a thread about this, and what Arsenal would be looking for. So just give me 1 second. I'm going to look for it and try to figure out why. Right at this moment, as I start to talk to you guys, my nose just says, you know what? I'm going to clog all the way up. How about that? So Ben Jacobs says Arsenal have further talks scheduled over Joao Felix loan. Atletico Madrid demands remain high, with the Spanish club hoping to pit suitors against each other. No package agreed yet. AFC ideally want an option, but not a given. Set below 70 million and a loan fee around 5 million. So that's a pretty big gap between 9 million and a guaranteed 70 million purchase fee versus 5 million, loan fee and 70 million option to buy, or lower than that. So this still seems a little bit, you know, far away. He also said Man United are now being told an 8 million loan fee, as previously reported, is Atletico's current expectation. This is a reduction from before Christmas, but still well above the Manchester United, what they think is reasonable, especially given Felix's 5.3 million pounds in wages. Any club must take on all of this. Obviously, a bit of a divide between the Glazers, want to spend, blah, 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 blah. I already said that to you guys. Both AFC and Man United and Atletico want to do a speedy resolution. It's true, Diego Simeone getting frustrated with all the uncertainty, but any deal still requires a significant give from Atletico. So it's one of those where it's like, a deal can be done and they're willing to do a deal, but only on their terms. And Atletico got their pants pulled down by Benfica for Joao Felix. And I think Joao Felix is an amazing player. But the issue is that they want to recoup a lot from a player that they spent way too much on. And the only clubs that are going to be able to spend this type of money, um, I think are Premier League clubs. And so they're looking at Premier League clubs. They have two that are interested, but Manchester United are only willing to spend 3 million and Arsenal are only willing to spend 5. And nobody wants the obligation. They want the option so that they can see if it actually works out, which is the best thing for us. And so I do think that this is one that, although Joao Felix is really talented and he looks quite frustrated. I don't know if you guys watched him for Atletico against Barcelona, but the fans were not happy with his performance. He looked very frustrated. He was very much like, kind of bitching at his, excuse the language, but his teammates, and he didn't look like somebody that was like excited to be there, if that makes sense. And so like his current market value is 50 million euros. Like, but Atletico bought him for 127 million euros. So, I mean, they got their pants pulled down. I mean, they really did. Especially because if you think about, that was in 2019. We're in 2023 now, and this is before Antony and Grealish and stuff like that. So that was an astronomical fee for that time, even if it was just like a couple years ago. And he signed like a 7-year contract, which is very long. And now they're like, okay, well, we want this and this and this, but nobody is going to spend that. So yes, my nose is like, it's not even my nose is like running, my head is just congested. So like there's nothing I can do about it, you guys. But my nose is not like running though. But thank you for your concern. But yeah, with Joao Felix, it's just a little bit of like, I do think that Atletico would be happy to let him stay through the season. I've seen that come out quite a bit, is that Joao Felix will, there's still a big chance that he might stay. And so even though I do think that Arsenal really have interest in him, I have a hard time understanding where the compromise is going to come in from, the 9 million to 5, the option versus the not. But we'll see. Arsenal are supposed to have additional talks with Atletico, and we'll kind of see what happens from there. Lay down the law says everyone gets their pants pulled down. We got owned by Lille for Pepe. We can't go around demanding 50 million for Pepe. Yeah, no, we won't. I just feel like with Joao Felix, like it's such, I don't know if I want to say it was a flop, but it wasn't a good fit. And so, but he's still young. And so they're like, okay, well, because he's still young, you can still kind of push this notion that he's a top player and it's fine and all this kind of stuff. But no, like nobody is going to pay that 9 million fee. Like they're just not with all of his wages and not with an obligation to buy for 70 million. That's, even though it seems like a good deal and we're like, oh yeah, for Joao Felix, that's great. For what he's done at Atletico and his actual true market value being 50 million, I think a lot of clubs will want that to come down. Khalid says, Jess, did you watch Atleti versus Barca? I did. I now understand why Felix is frustrated. They go out and try to cross the ball to Felix and Griezmann. He needs to leave that club. I was saying yesterday that I did feel as though like no creative player should go there because your career is just done from there. They spent like 70 million on what was his name? It went out of my head so quickly. What is his name? We almost bought him. What was his name? Lamar. We almost bought Lamar. They ended up buying him, and he looks like a travesty of a player. Now, I don't think that when he went there, he was anywhere near as bad as what he is now, but he went to a place where like they don't play creative football, and he came from Monaco. And if you remember that Monaco team that Mbappe was on, it was Mbappe and Fabinho and Bakayoko and Falcao and all these guys. That was a very free-flowing, like fun system where, it wasn't anything like Simeone's system. And so when creative players go to Atletico, I'm kind of like, but why? Like, why are you going there? It doesn't make sense. So no creative player has really, for me, like since Simeone has been there, really kind of like got going. It's rough. Yo-Yo says Joao Felix was meant to replace Antoine and failed to. That didn't stop them from winning the title again and re-signing for Antoine for way less than they sold him to Barca. Big clubs accept risk. Davo says, Jess, every time I watch Saka, his price valuation goes up and up. You agree? Yeah, but I expect him not like his valuation is amazing and I want his valuation to go up, but I also don't care about it at that much because I don't expect him to leave anytime soon. You know what I mean? But yeah, like Joao Felix still has somewhat of like a high ceiling and he does have talent and stuff, but he does need to move clubs. And it seems like he really is pushing and wants to go. But Atletico have their demands, and I'm not sure if Arsenal will go to them. I also still feel like Arsenal are using the interest in Joao Felix to show Shakhtar that they're not desperate and they will go and buy somebody else if they're unwilling to come down on their demands. So, I mean, we just have to wait and kind of see. Like, that's kind of where we're at right now, you guys. Like, wait and see what happens. Nothing is going to happen soon, I don't think. And so the idea of getting in our players early is done and dusted. Now, there was another rumor that came out yesterday, and I've seen it a couple of different times, was that Arsenal and Newcastle are among teams that are keeping track of Alejandro Balde's contract situation. Alex Balde is left back, but can also play right back and left wing and all that kind of stuff. He's at Barcelona right now. If you watched the game yesterday, then you saw him play. He's really, really good, young player. And I thought he looked interesting on the day. Do we need a left back at the moment? No, I don't see it being like something that we need to. I can see Arsenal keeping track of a lot of young, talented players with contractual situations because you never know when the opportunity may arise. But I don't actually think this is something that's like pressing and on like we have to get a left back in. We still have Nuno out on loan, although I don't see him coming back. But at the moment, you have Zinchenko, Tommy, and Tierney. Left back is kind of stocked. Right back is where I think there's an opportunity to bring somebody in. But yeah, I'm not really seeing where that would come into play, but we are like tracking him. And so, yeah, I just wanted to put that out there because he also played yesterday. And so you guys might have seen him. Dabo says, come on, guys and gals, 122 people watching and only 32 likes. Show a bit more love to Jess. You guys like the video, subscribe to the channel. I know it's early, but do me a favor. Johnny 10 says, still think he has a high ceiling, but needs to be an attacking team. Exactly. So that's kind of the Joao Felix news. Make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel. We'll move on to the next thing. We talked about Felix. We talked about Balde. Now we're going to talk about midfield. So Monaco has put in a offer for Danilo, and they're basically like the rumors that are out there that Arsenal is still interested in him. Atletico Madrid is interested in him. And so Palmeiras is open to other teams going ahead and putting in bids, and Arsenal are still interested. Now, midfield is so important for Arsenal because we know that we have one player there that if they were unable to play for us, we'd be in loads and loads of trouble. Not because there's other players that can't do a job, but we know that at the top end, that player makes a huge difference in big games. We know who we're talking about. We're talking about Thomas Partey. So the DM position is one that's been kind of like on the cards for a long period of time in Arsenal fans' minds. Now, I've never really seen Arsenal do anything that would suggest that they're stressed out about GM the way that we are. I think they seem pretty comfortable and confident with El Neni being the backup. They only moved on a DM in the summer when El Neni became injured. And so that says to me that like El Neni is fine. We're okay with this. This is cool. you know, but there has been a long-standing interest in Danilo that I feel like has kind of went from way up here and then kind of went down a little bit and plateaued. And I think that when you listen to people that watch the Brazilian league, they said that he was kind of playing really, really well, and then his form really, really dropped off. And so I'm not sure if that's what Arsenal like have seen, or that's the reason why they're not as interested, but there seems to be still some interest there. Do I see it happening in January? I'm not sure, just because I do feel like we're in the market for an attacker and that's it. And we'll go big on midfield in the summer. That's what I'm hoping. At some point, we have to go big on midfield, right? Because like xhaka and Thomas Partey are not getting any younger. They're both in their 30s. And so it's kind of like, what are we going to do? When are we going to refresh? When are we going to bring in players that we feel confident can back these players up? You know my feelings on Sambi. I'm not going to go over them because I don't want to trigger anybody. But, you know, even in terms of Elneny, at some point, Elneny needs to be moved on. GSM is saying that Aston Villa want Elneny. I saw those rumors as well. I do not see Arsenal sanctioning that unless they bring somebody in. Is Danilo that guy? My feeling is that Danilo is very talented, but he needs a move before he comes to Arsenal. He needs to experience a top 5 league before he comes to the Premier League. That is my feeling on Danilo. And so going to a Monaco or something like that seems like a better move for him at this point before he moves forward. But yeah, like we need a midfielder, but do I think Arsenal are as pressed as we are for a midfielder? No, I don't. But there are rumors that Arsenal are still interested in Danilo, and they're, Palmeiras are open to more bids coming in. I also just think like Monaco has probably put in a bid that's quite low, and they're like hoping that other people will come in for him. But yeah, I'm not sure if this one is for us, but Arsenal fans are very desperate for a midfielder. This is from I don't know how to say this. Theo Fernandez, where Arsenal are competing with Atletico Monaco for Palmeiras Danilo. He says one club has made an offer and we had a 20 million bid rejected in the summer. This is a signing, blah, 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 that this person says they'd really get behind. So yeah, we put in a 20 million pound bid for him, but never or an offer, but never really firmed that up. So yeah, the faint links to Danilo and kind of like the loose interest and bids and stuff for Tielemans gives me the feeling that Arsenal are not as desperate for a midfielder as we are. So let's see what you guys are saying. Saida says, but what if this Danilo situation becomes another Guimaraes situation? Wouldn't it be better to get him and develop him or send him out on loan? Could it become a Guimaraes situation? I mean, we did have a situation in January a couple of years ago where we were interested in bringing in Bruno Guimaraes, and we lost out to him, to Juninho, of all people, at Lyon. And he ended up there and then ended up going to Newcastle. So we had multiple opportunities to get Bruno Guimaraes, but we never pulled the trigger for some reason. So I understand your feelings on that, and that could actually be a reality, is that Danilo could end up being a really special player. We let him go to Monaco and then he ends up somewhere else. He ends up at Chelsea, he ends up at Newcastle, he ends up somewhere like that. But for me, I don't think I would want to bring him in if he wasn't ready to kind of like step in for Thomas Partey. If he were, because that's the only reason why we bring in a midfielder at this point, is like if for some reason Thomas Partey and Elneny got injured, both of them at the same time, then like he would be able to step in. So I don't know. I feel like I'm almost okay with him going somewhere else, because I think Arsenal should go for somebody a little bit more proven anyway. Going into the Champions League, we have enough developmental players that are developing. We have enough of those. Like we have a lot, and so it would be okay if Arsenal could go in for somebody that's a little bit more proven. But I hear what you're saying. You don't want to miss out on somebody again, but sometimes that happens. There's 150 of you guys in here. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. Billy says, I don't think a midfielder is a priority right now. And then he can do a job. We also have ESR coming back and believe he'll play 8-10 if we sign Mudryk. Felix. Let's see. Arol says, Jess Mudryk deal should be wrapped up in 10 days. Breaking news, Jess. I don't know where you're getting that from, but if there's like a link to it or somebody who put it out there, let me know and I'll check it. Yo-Yo says the Bruno G hype was warranted. That guy would have replaced Xhaka unlike a certain Belgian. Yeah, that's the one link and the one player that we've missed out on that I feel like you could probably say it was a mistake. Maybe not a mistake per se, but a missed opportunity because he could play Thomas Partey and Xhaka's position quite easily. Like he's an all-around midfielder. I do feel like well-rounded midfielders that can do a job in both boxes should cost you 80 to 100 million because players are so specialized now. They can only do certain things really well, and so that's why the likes of like Bellingham are going to go for like 100 million. Those players are they're so hard to find. And he's one of them. And you could have snapped him up for like 36 million. And I thought it was strange that we didn't do it, but whatever. Billy says, I also don't think any top club have more than 2 DMs in their books. Remember, Casemiro was the only 1 DM at Madrid for years. We need players to adapt if there is an injury. I hear you. I think like the turnover in Arsenal's midfield needs to be Elneny gone and then somebody younger and up and coming through that could become a world-class DM should be in our ranks. That's how I feel about it. I think Elneny is the player that kind of needs to be replaced in this group. Not that I think Elneny is the worst player in the world, but he's not taking us anywhere. And when Thomas Partey is done or hits the wall, like we know some players, it happens overnight. Like look at Fabinho. It happened overnight. It was like he's 31 years old, boom, overnight, bam, like he's finished. And so for Thomas Partey, for me, it's a little bit like if that were to be next season or the season after, is there somebody that's 23, 24 years old that can step straight into those shoes and become that player? We don't really have that. We have Elneny that's the same age as Thomas Partey and Granit Xhaka. And so I understand not having so many DMs on the books, and that's not something that you usually see. Squad building wise, that's not the smartest thing. But I think the natural turnover should start happening. Do you know what I mean? Simply says, what do you think of Declan Rice? I really hate to say this, but I don't rate him as much as other people. And I feel like he's kind of overrated in a way. The only benefit that I can really see of having Declan Rice in some capacity is if he were to become England captain and we were to have him on our team, we would have England captain preferential treatment. But other than that, I find him to be quite underwhelming and a little bit just like somebody that people really like, but I cannot see it with my eyes. So it is what it is. Elliot says, love Danilo, but you're right, Jess. He needs a bit more seasoning in another league before we take him out of the oven. Declan Rice in the summer is the move. You guys love him. It's fine. Like I'm totally okay with other people loving him and me just not understanding. And my thing as well is if he were to come to Arsenal, I would want him to do well and I would back him and be like, he's amazing, whatever. This is just something that I'm not seeing, Big White Clock says Rice is excellent. The claret and blue blinds you to crapness. Maybe. Lay Down the Law says Declan Rice is only 23 though. He can get better. Exactly. There are players in our team that were in their late 20s that got better under Arteta. So yeah, I totally hear what you guys are saying. Mr. Damie says, I don't understand how you don't rate Declan Rice. I don't know either. I've tried to see it. I really try to see it. And I'm just I don't know. I just don't, and it just is what it is. So yeah, that's fine. Speaking on another midfielder, there's been some reports that Arsenal have reached out to Milinkovic-Savic's agent to to see about a move in the summer? I don't know. Some of you guys love this Milinkovic-Savic person. I think he's really, really talented. But, like, does he exist for real? Like, this guy is always linked to coming to the Premier League and, like, never actually comes, and it's always like, "It's for next summer, it's for next summer, it's for next summer." Milinkovic-Savic is a really talented player, and I think, like, if you just plopped him into our team, could he play well for Arsenal? Yes. Do I see where he naturally fits in? No. Because he's 27, he's gonna expect to start, and xhaka is still there. Vieira, we bought Vieira. Where does ESR go? There's a lot of stuff going there. I'm not sure where he naturally fits in. Some people are like, he could become a six. I don't think at 27 years old, he's just going to plop up and become a number six. He is like an advanced midfielder, from my understanding, that scores goals and, stuff like that. So I don't know, but he'll be like 28 next season. I just not sure that I actually see this happening. Lazio are always talking about selling this guy for a record fee and all this kind of stuff. He has 1 year left on his deal, so you're not going to get a record fee. But my feeling on this, like it's always kind of been, is that maybe Arsenal have talked to his agent, or maybe he's been offered to Arsenal, and they're using that to try to get another team, Juventus, to come get him. It feels like a come hither me call. But it's another midfielder that's been linked to Arsenal, but not really anything substantial. And I guess my overall feeling on midfield in the January transfer window is that it's not being addressed, and we'll just have to deal with what we have. So Sambi, Elneny, Thomas Partey, xhaka, they will have to do the work, Odegaard, it is what it is. You know what I mean? So I don't see a midfielder coming in. The links that are coming out are so weak. You know what I mean? In terms of like, there's nothing significant there, which leads me to believe that Arsenal are in no hurry to improve the midfield as it stands. Saida says, Jess, I feel the same way about Rice. He may have been underrated at a time, but now he's becoming overrated. Yeah. Anybody that was saying he was worth 100-something million, he just was never worth that. He's probably worth like 50, 60. Let's see. GSM says, Jess is not wrong with Rice. If he's that good, City, United, Real Madrid, or Todd Bowley would have signed him a long time ago. Like, my whole thing about like Rice and stuff like that, it's just a personal preference thing, I think, for me. I think it's just when I see him, I don't really see, and I think if you guys haven't been here for a long time, then I'll let you guys know that Thomas Partey was always the midfielder that I wanted to come to Arsenal, like always, always, always. And so when we got him, for me, he was like the perfect fit. And then when Arteta kind of like did his magic and stuff, I was like, this is what a DM should be. Like, this is what it is. You know what I mean? When I see Declan Rice, I don't really see him doing the same role as Thomas Partey. And I think that's the mental block there, is that I don't see it. Like, I see somebody who's good at covering his fullbacks, sweeping up danger in front of the back four, doing some of the recycling through the midfield. But do I see somebody that has the ability to drop the shoulder and get away from his marker? No. Do I see somebody that can pass, who has great passing in between the lines and a really good passing range? No. So I'm not seeing those things, and maybe that's the mental block, is I don't really see him playing that same role as Thomas Partey. But some of you guys have kind of put it out there to me, and maybe this is where I need to grow as a football fan, is that like different players can play the same position and they don't have to play it exactly the same, but you can still get the same result, which is a win, right? So if you were to put Declan Rice into our number 6 role right now today with the same team that we have, would we still win games? Probably, and that's just something that, I maybe I just need to get around my head, but at the moment, it's not connecting. Cullen says Rice is a good player, but I don't think he's as good as some people make him out to be. I could be wrong. could come to Arsenal and be world class. I mean, we just don't know because he's not really exactly what, because he plays like in a double pivot right now for Moyes. We don't play like that. So when you're playing in a double pivot, sometimes you have to see like what is one player giving to the other, what are the things that they're missing. And Declan Rice does a lot of the sweeping, a lot of that kind of stuff. And I'm like, does he have the passing? Does he have the ability to be our release valve in the middle of the pitch? Does he have that? And I'm just like, I'm not sure. But I do think he's a good player. He's just not everything that people are like, he's our savior, he's coming. And I'm just like, I don't know. Roman says, are people just hating Rice because of what happened with Maguire? What do you mean? Like, in terms of like being from like a smaller club or something like that? What's the connection between him and Maguire? Is it being just like English? Like, I don't know. I think in general, the footballing world really rates Rice. So I think not rating Rice is an unpopular opinion. So I don't think that people are just hating on him because of what happened with Maguire. I think people that don't rate him just don't rate him because maybe it's an eye thing. I'm not sure if it's anything like other than that. Now, somebody else that has been spoken about a lot that I did want to touch on was Patino. Billy says Patino can be that, but he needs another loan in a top flight, most interceptions of under 21 or something like that. Yeah. So Patino's doing really well at Blackpool. I did watch the game that they played against Nottingham Forest, and he was pretty good. He's definitely growing into himself as a player and plays in kind of like that 2 in midfield behind the number 10 role. And he looked good. He looked good doing it. What we know about Charlie Patino is that he has all the technical ability in the world. But in order for your technical ability to shine at the top level, you have to be physically ready to withstand the tackles and running and all that kind of stuff. And I think that's the gap right there, is like physically, I still see a player that is growing into it and getting used to playing men's football, but definitely has so much quality. He also has the most interceptions under 21, but he has the most goal involvements. The only player that has more goal involvements at his age range is Bellingham. So he's doing a really good job. This is exactly what you want from a loan. There's a lot of the other players that came out of our academy that have struggled in their loans. Aziz being one of them. And so Patino going to Blackpool and playing the way that he's playing, starting games, withstanding an injury as well, because he had an injury early on, and being kind of like a constant figure in their team is definitely giving me like Emile Smith-Rowe vibes, like when he went to Huddersfield, I think it was. And so I still think he needs another loan because he's still young and the body development and all that kind of stuff. But I do think that like he'll be the next one to come through. And that's why we extended his contract. He's probably getting eyes from all different types of places. Our academy is definitely somewhere where people like to shop. Players that are not getting the eyes that they think, or the contracts that they get or they want, or the playing time in the first team that they feel like they deserve. Those types of players are a good little shop to shop from. And so Patino is somebody that is probably going to want to start getting first team minutes or start to want to know what his pathway is. But he's not ready yet. And I still think him and Brooke Norton-Cuffy need to stay out on loan. They don't need that type of pressure. We have enough young players in our team as it is. We are the youngest team in the Premier League still. So adding more young players I don't think will really help right now, but he looks really, really good. And so I'm happy for him. Let's see. Neil says, Patino ain't ready yet. Prem first. Team football is a huge difference. Fans just need to let him develop just like they do with Balogun. I just want to see these people gone, and out of our sights, so people don't feel like they need to be in this team right now. And I feel like sometimes we see a player and they're playing well where they're at, and it's like they need to come into the team. I need to see them. It's almost like a hoarder's mentality. It's like I want all my shiny new trinkets. I want them all in front of my face. I don't want them put away. I want them out. And it's like, let him do his thing and he'll be fine. Cullen says Patino is only 19, I think, so it's great for it to see him developing. Could be the next big one. Definitely one to watch. I agree. BroPro says he's like the first name on the team sheet. He's so good. Mr. Damie says Arsenal's 2-3-5 with a single pivot release valve, inject rice into my veins. Well, fair enough. Khalid says Billy Patino needs to bulk up a bit. He looks so weak for a deep lying midfielder. And that's another thing, is that like if Arsenal envision him to be deep in midfield, not an 8, not a 10, but somebody that's going to play in the 6 role, he's going to need to develop his physicality, because the first thing a team that's not as good as you will do, you know, any team lower down the division, the first thing they'll do is say, well, I can't keep up with you technically, so I'll see if I can get into you physically. And so it's like they'll just hammer him. And I remember like the flashbacks of him and Sambi playing against was it Forest last season, and that was like the first thing that they did to him, was like they got in on him like that. It made it really difficult for him to like see the pitch. I'm sure all he saw was Nottingham Forest players around him, because it was just like, it was a lot. Technically he has it, he just needs more, he needs to bulk up a little bit. Big White Clock says Santi Cazorla wasn't physical, but see the difference is that you can be small, you can be short, you could be a small man, but there's still a difference between a small man and a child. Do you know what I mean? Physically. And so Santi could avoid tackles and things like that, and he could drop the shoulder, and he was technically brilliant. But he had a man's body even though he was small. Like David Silva had a man's body even though he was small. And so I think we are kind of like, well, Patino is 6 feet tall, but his body mass is like me, you know, like, and if somebody ran into me, I would just fall on the ground. Do you know what I mean? So I do think that we just need to let him continue to do his thing, but he looks like the next thing coming. You know, he looks like the next thing, like the next guy coming through, because he's already kind of like doing his loans, which looks great. Tinabik says DM is one of the most demanding, high pressure and high reasonability positions in our squad. Wouldn't feel comfortable putting it on Patino's shoulders. It's just about protecting him, like Mr. Damie is saying. It's just, if you believe he's this good, which we saw with Saliba as well, keep him away. Keep him away. Let him do his thing. It's fine. Because even Saliba, as good as he is, we've seen that he's having his first year kind of like adaptation. And this is somebody who's 6'4", man's body, young player of the season in France. Like, those center back type positions, center back, goalkeeper, DM, striker, those positions for me that have so much like riding on them. If you don't win a game, it's on the striker, it's on the center back, it's on the goalkeeper, maybe it's on the DM. And so those positions, I think, have to be deputized by people that can kind of take on that. And we've seen with Saliba, even with him, people are starting to, oh, he's not doing this, he's making these mistakes. Well, of course he is. He's a young player, and like Patino is 19. What do you think is going to happen with him? So Big White Clock says DM is the easiest position on the field usually, but he's right. At Arsenal, it's a nightmare to play on your own. Exactly. Like, we don't play with our DM in a double pivot, and their only role is to just like shuffle right in front of the back line and just offer help and all that kind of stuff. It's a very complex position that it took even Thomas Partey, somebody with a lot of experience, time to get used to. I mean, even he had some shocking games, right? Philip said Cazorla couldn't play Sol 6 for us. It's the most demanding position, in my opinion. Mr. Bailey says, why aren't we looking at the players like Owani, who had an amazing World Cup? PSG, Leeds, West Ham have him on their radar. Well, because Leeds and West Ham have him on their radar. Like, I think the teams that are interested in you also kind of say what your level actually is. And so maybe he's somebody that needs to go to a Leeds or something like that before he makes the big move, like somebody like almost like a Mahrez in a way, where he went to Leicester and then ended up at Manchester City. I think with Awani, my thing is, like, first of all, like, not a lot of people really knew about him before the World Cup. He had a couple of really good performances, and now it's like he's the answer. I'm like, I don't think he's the answer. And I also think Arsenal, we look at our players all the time. It's like when you have something and you're used to it, you know all of its flaws, you've seen it, you've digested it so much, you're like, this is what I have. And so you don't see it as, you don't you've you've analyzed it so much that you think whatever's on the outside is better, right? Or is the answer. But our players are really, really, really good, especially in the midfield. Our midfield is very, 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 very good. And it's going to take a really special player to break through. And I don't think we're looking for players that can just fill numbers in behind, players that can eventually usurp the players that are already there. So that's why they brought in Vieira, is because he's not maybe ready just yet, but he's somebody with the technical ability, the intelligence, the footballing IQ, and all this kind of stuff to eventually really fight for that position as an 8. You don't just want to bring in any old players because they're having a good season or they're having a good period, because we're so used to seeing our players that I do think that we think they're worse than what they actually are. Or we feel like anybody that's playing good at a Leicester or West Ham or, somewhere Monaco or Lille or whatever could just come into our team and just get in front of all the players that we have. And I don't think it works like that. So for me, Awani looked really good at the World Cup, albeit international tournaments for me are not a place to look for players to come into Arsenal Football Club, period. He looked really good. He's good where he is now. But do I think he's coming into Arsenal and getting into the team and ahead of anybody that we have there now? No. And do I think he's necessarily so much better than Vieira that, I would prefer him over Vieira? No, I want Vieira to have his time to cook. So I don't know why we look at Awani if his number one suitors are Leeds and West Ham. I think we need players that are just really gonna take us to that next level. I'm not sure he's it. But I understand what you're saying. It's like maybe more under the radar players, but those players Arsenal don't really go for players that are easily accessible. Arsenal don't go for players that are easily accessible. There's so many players out there that look pretty good on other teams. Arsenal don't go for those players. You know what I mean? Awani is kind of like one of those where I'm like, he looks really good. He's technically, he looks nice and all that kind of stuff, but does he bring us up a level? Probably not. Can we guarantee that he's going to be better than Vieira or Emile Smith-Rowe? Probably not. So why would we bring him in, even though he's easily accessible for 20 million? We just don't bring in those types of players. And I think it's because Arsenal are looking for players that are going to definitely take us to the next level, which most of the players that we brought in have, to be honest. I mean, Partey, Gabriel, Jesus, Odegaard, White, those players, Zinchenko, if you really think about it, Ramsdale, every player that we pretty much brought in to start have taken us to the next level, and I think that that's the thing is Arsenal don't just want to bring in anybody. Do you know what I mean? But I get what you're saying. Roman says, thank you, Jess. Our midfield is really good, so improvements will be difficult and expensive. So coming on to our last topic here is somebody who you may or may not think will take us to the next level, and that's Mykhailo Mudryk, the player that we've been linked with since the summer, that we're still hoping to bring in January. Now, we've been at a standstill. There's been talks of Chelsea being really interested in him as well and wanting to they want assurances that he'd be willing to come to them before they put in a bid. I think that makes sense. You don't want to be just putting in bids for players that don't want to come to your team. I think Edu kind of like learned that lesson with Vlahovic last January. And so you want to make sure that players actually want to come to your club first. And that's what would trigger Chelsea into really trying to push for Mudryk. They also need wingers. I don't think they need them necessarily more than we do, but both teams really need them. And so Mudryk is just sitting there. He's actually not even sitting there now because their training camp now starts on today. So he'll be going to train with the club. And I think what Shakhtar want is to show, they don't want to show too many of their cards. They want to show, like, especially the world and stuff, that they're not going to be pushed around by a club in England that has a lot of money and stuff like that to just accept anything because the player wants to go there. They will keep him and make him go to training camp and stuff because they're not under any pressure to sell. That is what they want to show. And Arsenal want to show on their end that, you know, they have a valuation. They're not going to get their pants pulled down and they have other options and they will leave him there. Everybody feels like there's still confidence that the deal will get done and stuff like that. Everybody's recycling the same things over and over and over again because nothing has really changed. They're at a standstill. I don't even know if there's, constant negotiations or anything like that. I really don't. I don't know if there's anything happening with the deal. I know that once negotiations are kind of started, I do think that Arsenal transfers tend to get more quiet. I do think that people tend to, like, the club really clams up when they're in negotiations. Like, we won't hear anything for a while. I think, like, the Zinchenko thing was kind of like that. We put in a bid, and then it was kind of like it went quiet, and then all of a sudden it was like they've reached an agreement, blah, 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 blah. Jesus was kind of like that as well. And so the waiting period is really difficult. I think the waiting period is really, really difficult, you know? And so we just have to wait it out and see what happens. But this is one of those where as the transfer window goes on, I think my confidence in it getting done gets a little bit, it starts to go a little bit more towards like maybe not, because Shakhtar are not under really any sort of like pressure to sell, you know, and they're making that quite clear. So yeah, I still want him. I still think that he's a player that would improve us. We definitely need attackers, but by the time he gets here, potentially, let's just say he gets here on the last day of the season or last day of the transfer window, because I wouldn't be surprised if that's how long it took. He will have missed Oxford, Tottenham, Man United, Tottenham, Man United, and maybe potentially even the game against Man City in the League Cup. To be honest, like after that, then we play like Everton, Brentford, we play Man City, Villa, Leicester, Bournemouth, Fulham. In the month of March, like, we'll get Jesus back. And so I think that, like, of course, it's a marathon and we want to get through all the games, and our season gets difficult again in April, where we play Liverpool, City, Chelsea, Newcastle, all like in a space of like a couple games. So yeah, we have like another really difficult period coming up in April that we have to look forward to. But the difficult period in January was so, so important as well. And I think not getting him before then is kind of like, damn, you know, it'd been really nice to go into the Tottenham game and the Manchester United game with another player, a player like that, you know, would give the team a boost, if not actually contribute in that match. And so, I don't think it gets done before then, because I don't know. Like, I don't know why I just feel like this deal is going to go all the way down to the wire if it does go down. So we know Edu is always very like patient, even though we're not. So yeah, I hope it gets done. I'm wanting it to get done, but there's nothing really like happening right now. MC says it's easy for Peeps to just say pay the money. Arsenal have been burnt in the past. If they have a value of an unproven player, they should stick to it or get hustled like Man United with Anthony. Jeremy says the thing is we can now attract the right kind of players. Exactly. Roman says, I think Mudryk really wants to join Chelsea. I don't know what he wants to do. Tenobix says Rafinha 2.0, but we are Barca, but external circumstances like the invasion are going to draw this saga out into the end. I agree with that. I think it will drag on all the way to the end. Khalid says he must be crazy if he goes to Chelsea. They'll ruin his career like they did with Ziyech. He wants us and we want him, but Shakhtar is making it difficult. Reminds me of Lyon. Yeah, it's just they want to sell for like the highest amount of money that they possibly can. And I don't really blame them for that, because if somebody came in for Saka and we were in a situation where we felt like we needed to sell him or he wanted to leave, I would be like, well, we'll start the bids at 200 million, but at the same time, the player really wants to leave and is ready and is pushing for the move. So we'll see what happens. It may still happen, but at the same time, like, missing the Tottenham and Man United games for me is pretty significant, considering we don't have any backup. Like, we have no options off the bench. Like, we're going into very difficult fixtures with the inability to make changes if something were to go wrong. And that is kind of concerning. Reggie says the other thing in the market is inflated right now. In the summer, there will be more choices, so his price will go down potentially. Lay down the law says Mudryk is giving me Awar vibes. Leon tried to extort for Awar, but then he lost his form and he doesn't even start these days. Well, yeah, they also have to consider that, is that, like, if Mudryk, maybe he does hit a wall, maybe he doesn't get any better. But at the same time, like, I want to believe that he's a good enough player where he's not somebody where, we wanted him and then he didn't get the move, and then in a couple of months we realized he wasn't that good. Like, you know what I mean? But that could happen. Smart Cookie says, I'm still waiting for Chelsea to put a bid in for Mudryk. Either poop or get off the pot, Mr. Bowley. I don't think they will unless they feel like they can get him. And I don't think they feel like they can at the moment. But they are, like, they're waiting for our deal to collapse. That's essentially what it feels like to me. So yeah, and I understand it gives you Awar vibes. The only thing with Awar is Awar never really wanted to come to Arsenal. At the beginning of that saga, he wanted to go to Real Madrid or Juventus. He was not interested in coming to Arsenal. He was kind of convinced, and he was so desperate to leave Lyon that he decided, like, okay, well, if I'm not going to be able to leave to go to one of those clubs, I'll go to Arsenal. And the deal collapsed anyway. So it's still a little bit different, but I understand, like, the premise of it with the club being really stubborn is quite kind of the same. Roman says, I hope if Mudryk joins, he doesn't expect to be a starter regardless of the fee ends up. I don't know, like, I want him to want to be a starter and almost expect it in a way where it makes him work hard to get that starting spot. Quite frankly, I don't really want players at Arsenal that feel like they're backups and they're okay to be behind other players and all that kind of stuff, especially in attack. Like, I would prefer the players that are sitting behind Saka and Martinelli to feel like they should be starting because they're good enough to, and to push Saka and Martinelli. And so if that's Mudryk, if he's like, well, I'm the big money player, and he plays like a big money player, that's what I want. But definitely not somebody that just expects to start and doesn't do the work. I don't want that. Indian Scouser says, big up, Jess. Keep up the great work. Thank you so much. All right, you guys. So obviously we have a game today. We have a game today and against Oxford United away from home at 8 p.m. in the third round of the FA Cup. If and when we get through that, we know what's waiting for us on the other side. So we talked about that at the top of the show. But like I was saying this on Twitter and people disagreed, as they always do, which is fair. But I think Arsenal, if they want to get to the next round, they need to go a little bit stronger than probably people would be comfortable with, because anybody could get got by the magic of the FA Cup. We've seen it before. We've been one of them. And quite frankly, like, I don't trust a team full of the backups, for lack of a better term, because the way that I think about it as well is that you have to keep some sort of level of continuity within that team, continuity and physicality. And the reason why I say that is, like, for continuity's sake, there are players that have not really played any sort of minutes really since the Europa League, and that was before the World Cup. So we're talking about a month and some change where some people haven't played. So they're really rusty. So I'm talking about like Vieira, Sambi, like those guys, Marquinhos, they really haven't played that much. So having like having a whole team full of them, Cedric, I do think you're kind of setting yourself up for when you're going to be playing against another team's, albeit Oxford, but another team's team that are used to playing with each other at their place. So for me, I would prefer Arsenal to keep some level of continuity, and then also physicality. So these teams down the chain tend to try to mitigate their technical level with being more physical and bumping and hitting people and being more aggressive, especially because, again, will be away from home and their fans will be up for it. So I would say I would not start off with a midfield of Vieira, Sambi, and Elneny. I would not do that. And I've seen a lot of that midfield going around. For me, I saw enough in the Europa League where I don't think we have the ability and to go out with a midfield like that and not expect for the drop off to be massive and for us to be leaving ourselves exposed. You know what I mean? So I would say Elneny, Xhaka, and Vieira is what I'd go with. So Odegaard and Thomas Partey could rest. It sucks, but Xhaka is kind of like the glue. He's somebody that you can rely upon. He has the best fitness. So I would start Granit against Oxford with Vieira and Elneny. That's what I would do, especially because Vieira and Sambi is really lightweight, and I think that would really help. Up front, I would go with Marquinhos, so Saka could rest, Nketiah and Martinelli. And then in the back, I would go with Tomiyasu at right back. I've gone back and forth about this, but Saliba, Holding, and Tierney, and Turner in goal. The reason why I considered Gabriel is because he's our best defender in away day situations when the circumstances are not at their best. So it's not a sunny day, it's raining, it's shit, field is crap, whatever it is. He's probably the better of the two, in circumstances like that. The one time I saw Saliba and Holding play together, I didn't like it, but I also feel like Saliba needs minutes to get the France thing out of his system. And so I would go with Saliba and Holding and Tierney at left back and Turner in goal. I think giving Ramsdale a little break is fair, but so a rotated squad, but not stupid. I've seen Cedric, Holding, Tomiyasu, Tierney, Elneny, Vieira, Sambi, Like I've seen so many like lineups where it's like everybody is rotated. That team is gonna get smoked. I don't care who it is. I don't care it's Oxford. I don't give a shit. I've seen enough of the FA Cup to understand the magic of the FA Cup can get anybody, and I don't want it to get us. So I would go with the team that I said at first, and then like once we're winning or whatever, then take Martinelli off and then put ESR in. I don't think ESR will start the game. You know what I mean? But yeah, that's what I would go with, for real. Roman says, Jess, seriously, why do you sound scared? Understand we would expect them, but still have confidence. I'm not saying like that we're 100% going to lose. I just don't. We saw it in the Europa League, you guys. It wasn't that long ago. We're in the group stages away from home. We struggled with teams that were really, really rotated. Specifically, I think it was against the Norwegian team, Bolo Glimt. We struggled against them away from home, and then we also struggled away from home against PSV. So my feeling on this is based on like real life examples of seeing teams that are really, really rotated that tend to struggle away from home, and also understanding that those teams down the pyramid are quite physical and their whole life is about the big scalp, the big scalp of a Premier League side. So I wouldn't say like go in with your best lineup that you could possibly put out there, but we saw Aston Villa go out to Stevenish, whatever yesterday. So for me, like is at least have xhaka out there, at least have one of your center back pairing out there. You can still rotate the goalkeeper, make sure that Saka is resting, whatever. But I've seen enough of this to understand that like that we have to have some level of continuity. Sorry, like you can't go out there. Yeah, Stevenage, exactly. And I know we're not Aston Villa, but I've seen us put in some Aston Villa performances like that against lower level opposition with highly rotated squads. And it's unfortunate because we don't have the academy players that are so good and put them out in these games because that's what we're used to. We're just not there. Like it's just not it, so we have to put in a semi-strong team. You know what I mean? And I know some people won't like it, but it's just the reality. That's what I would do. Jabu says, I agree, strong team. We playing 6 days later, enough time to rest. Afsar says, what happens if xhaka gets a red card? I don't know. He hasn't gotten one this season. I don't think we need to be on pins and needles about xhaka getting red cards this season. He just hasn't. He's been a lot smarter, and you know what I mean? So I don't think, what if Gabriel gets a red card? What if Saka gets a red card? Like, we could do that with, I get where you're coming from. That's not something I have anxiety about this season for some reason. I'll be more worried about xhaka getting a red card against Spurs or Manchester United versus Oxford United. So yeah. And red cards, I know they get carried over, but at the same time, like, I don't think we need to preemptively create lineups so that because we're afraid players are going to get red cards. I think I have enough faith in xhaka this season that he won't get a stupid red card against Oxford United. Amira says, Arteta always starts 3 from the first 11 in non-PL games, 1 each area of the pitch. It'll probably be Saliba, Granit, and Eddie. I'll go with the same team as you, but Vieira left wing instead of Martinelli. Then if you don't start Vieira in the middle, then who's going to start for Odegaard? I think that would be my question. That's why I have Martinelli and Eddie Nketiah, because first of all, Vieira is no winger, okay? And he would be the natural replacement for Odegaard. And maybe ESR starts, but I don't think ESR is going to start, personally, just because I feel like he'll just get a couple of minutes, if that makes sense. Maybe Odegaard starts to keep the continuity. Maybe he's the guy. Maybe you start Odegaard and xhaka and then just put in Elneny. I don't know. But I feel like Odegaard needs a rest. That's what I need. That's what I want. Peter says, Mudryk has that love for the club that makes him a perfect fit. We need players that will fight for the club. I agree. Jabu says, speaking of red cards, when did the yellow cards reset? After game week 19. After game week 19, I believe. And we are at match played 17. So after the Man United game, I think they reset. So we have a ways to go. just a couple games. So yeah, you guys, I just wanted to do a little catch-all episode, just talking about everything under the sun, because there's not much going on, but I want to make sure that we at least chit-chat a little bit. There's 200 of you guys in here. Please make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. And hopefully we win, go on to the next round. I think we will. But I will see you guys after the game. Again, make sure you guys like the video and subscribe to the channel. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye, guys. Love y'all. You're the best.